Welcome to Hard Knocks Life. I am Keith Chow.
I'm Britney.
Hi, I'm Dom Ma.
Hey everybody, we got a lot of Marvel shit to talk about.
Like always.
Yeah, at first I was like, are we going to talk about that teaser for an hour? And then after poring over it a couple times, it's like, yeah, there's a lot to
There's a lot
here.
in that teaser. There is a lot in that teaser. Yeah, like it's funny. Like we've become the Marvel shills podcast. All you DC fans out there who don't like the MCU, you can turn off the podcast now because we're going to.
Oh, come on. We do plenty of DC shilling. Marvel and DC, feel free to fight over our shilling. We can swing both ways.
Yeah, for sure. If you want to send some shillings our way, in fact, I will not say no. Well, let's get into it because there's a couple things we want to talk about. Before we do, at the end of the podcast, I actually have a conversation with my good old buddy Jerry Ma. His new Kickstarter, The Monkey King: A Chinatown Odyssey, not only met its goal in like 48 hours, it's now in its third stretch goal. So he's already like walking around Chinatown handing out cash to local businesses because that's what he's doing with his stretch goal. So we're going to be talking about that. So stay tuned. After the break will be me and Jerry. But before that, we have a lot of shit to talk about. Marvel dropped a couple trailers over the last several days, including one they just dropped we get to talk about finally. So let's talk about their Fantastic Phase 4. And before we get to that, there's a brand new trailer that just hit as soon as we started recording. And it's not Marvel, but it's Sony. But it's kind of Marvel.
Association with Marvel. What are you talking about?
Thank you. That's the precise wording, in association with.
And remember, this is the Venom movie that has a cameo or maybe more of the Vulture from Spider-Man Homecoming. So they're trying as hard as they can to sneak their way into the MCU. But what did you guys think of Venom: Let There Be Carnage?
I'm a big Spider-Man fan, and I'll admit I never got the Venom thing. For full disclosure, I didn't really see all of the first Venom movie. I've seen bits of it. But I thought this one has a good sense of humor. Like, who doesn't want a symbiote making you waffles and eggs in the morning? And that's and we have that cute exchange with the Asian corner store lady. I mean, it seemed like it was having a good time, and that's always been one of my beefs with Venom as a concept. Is just like too hulking, scary, kind of bro-ish. Like, seemed to take itself kind of seriously.
Mm-hmm. Brittany, you were a fan of the first Venom movie. What do you feel of the trailer for the sequel one?
I'm very excited. I can't wait to show my mom because my mom also really loves the first Venom movie. Like,
really?
anytime we catch that.
Brittany has like the coolest parents in the world, don't you think?
Yeah.
Like, her dad listens to our podcast. Her mom loves Venom. Like, how cool is that?
We're all at like home and pandemic, like trying to figure out what we can watch with our parents. And Brittany's mom is like, let's watch Venom. Like,
yeah, no, for real. She's like, Venom's on. And I'm like, yeah. That's like, my whole family actually really likes that movie. I don't know. We're just interesting people. I think because it's just a fun movie. And then we also really all kind of enjoy rom-coms. So like, I feel like Venom is like a rom-com. And I know there's going to be people like, what do you mean? But it is. It's so like, it has that formula and it does it so well. It's just with Venom. That's all. So it's great. I love it.
And the best part, it's a romantic comedy about Eddie Brock and the symbiote, right? Like that's the best part.
You mean like, in sense it's sort of a love triangle, or we're not even figuring the Michelle Williams?
I guess it's a bit of a triangle, right? Because you were talking about like the kiss in the first.
Oh
movie.
yeah. There's that cool kiss in the first movie, but I really do think it's like a nice little like love story between Venom and Eddie, and you kind of see that carry over into what we see in this trailer. Like, they're he's making them breakfast, they're hanging out, he's like ketchup, and then, like doing all that random stuff. And no, my favorite line from the first movie was like, "You are a loser, Eddie." So I don't know. They're so cute. I love them. I love this version of Venom. It's heartwarming for me. Like, people are probably, what the hell's wrong with her? But I love it.
That should go on. You should review it, and that'll be in the quotes for the show. Venom, heartwarming. I watched it with my mom.
Happy Mother's Day, everybody.
Yeah.
I actually like how they're leading into the whole odd couple, like Felix and Oscar of it all, with Venom and Eddie in the morning getting breakfast. Eddie's clearly like I guess Eddie's the Felix and Venom's the Oscar.
Mhm.
I don't know which one's which. Felix is the clean one, right? Anyway,
I
sorry.
can't remember.
Odd couple reference for Gen Z is just like, what? all you millennial listeners out there.
Yeah.
What
Oscar's
the
the
fuck
troublesome
is
one.
Felix and Oscar? What is he talking about?
I know the Odd Couple. Anyone who took theater classes hardcore will know that at least like 2 different people had done the Odd Couple, the female version and the male version. So we you have to know the Odd Couple.
No doubt.
And also the other big thing, of course, is that this is the debut of Carnage. Woody Harrelson looks a lot better in the trailer than he did in the post-credits scene from the first movie. What did you think of Woody Harrelson's Carnage debut?
I was gonna say, I just think he looks cool. It's Woody Harrelson too, so I feel like I don't know. I feel like I was gonna let that weird wig slide, anyways.
But he looks better, don't you think? Like he
Yes.
does look really bad in the post-credit scene, but in this one, he actually looks like a person.
Woody Harrelson's like a perfect guy to play a symbiote possessed character because he just like takes so many forms and just will not die. I mean, like he's so interesting to me. It's like, I mean, like no, like I don't want you to die, Woody Harrelson. Live forever. But I mean, like in our pop culture consciousness, it's just like it's just gone on forever.
His character on Cheers is so far removed from like the persona that we know of Woody Harrelson now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then same thing with Ted Danson, right? Like if you look at Sam Malone and Michael from The Good Place, it's like, that's that dude. Those dudes got range, is all.
Ted Danson should be one of the Osborns. I think
Ted Danson would be a great family. Norm Osborn.
Oh man, I think we gotta get on
Actually,
Spider-Man versus the Cheers cast, basically as the Sinister Six formed by the people in Cheers.
Oh my God.
George Wendt as Rhino.
Speaking of things that would make people Generation X or older happy while they're eating their Jello, wait, can I just ask this in a broader way? I really want to ask you folks. Maybe you can explain it to me. What is the symbiote allure? Because Venom was one of those like sort of creations of the 90s comics along with Deadpool and Cable that I never really got. I mean, I get Deadpool, but like, okay, so Venom comes along and like 30 years later he's still going strong. I mean, they just had the massive symbiote versus all the Marvel heroes events in the comics, and I never quite got how the premise was able to sustain such fascination over the years as a Spider-Man fan. Is it because he's like a horror movie, or
maybe? And I think this design is cool, and there's a lot of people who actually are sexually into Venom.
wow,
what?
Okay,
yes,
that's oh wow.
So
that's a new one.
I feel like that's part of it. There's some wild Venom fan art out there, like just fan art. I've seen some
Oh my
wild
God.
stuff. So
Because he's slimy and can create tentacles.
probably.
Probably.
This podcast took a turn.
Confirm or deny.
This podcast went from I watch it with my mom to tentacle porn in less than 5 minutes.
So it has crossover appeal, is what you're saying, Brittany.
Yes, I think that's what it is.
That's
what it is.
That's exactly what I was asking. I'm glad you illuminated that.
But Dom, I'm with you though. Like, I think this is as children of like 90s comics. Maybe that's the era where I kind of did check out, because I'm with you. I never, still honestly not really that much into Deadpool. Wasn't into Spawn, wasn't into like that whole Image revolution. Like,
yeah,
what was like Grifter and those guys? What were they called? Oh, the Wildcats.
Oh, the Wildcats and
Wildcats is DC technically now, so it doesn't matter. But like all that stuff, right? Like the whole Rob Liefeld, Todd McFarlane style, I never really dug, to be completely honest.
And Spawn kind of looks like Venom, and there's all there's so much flowy capes and shit.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like that kind of like when I think of Venom, when I think of Deadpool, like it's Liefeld, McFarlane, like those guys, and that was never, I was never into it. Like Jim Lee of the Image like creators, Jim Lee was like the one where I was like, oh okay, his art I understand. Liefeld's art, McFarlane's art, like I never thought.
Yeah. And I mean, and every era has their characters, but I mean, I think it's undeniable that Venom has gone on forever.
Oh,
that's
for sure.
That's the lasting appeal is what my query is about.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know why Venom. I don't know why Deadpool, but
Deadpool is amazing. Did you see my tweet about what like superhero personalities you're probably more like? And I'm like, I feel like it's Deadpool and Jessica Drew. Like those are my personalities, and I feel like I proved it today. So
well, yeah. I think
right.
the turn that this podcast took is clearly a
You-
Deadpool.
Who is that? Who's what Deadpool mashup would that be? Dead Drew?
Dead Drew, yeah.
Drew Pool.
But speaking of Spider-Woman, has Spider-Woman ever had her symbiote problem? I mean, I know Spider-Gwen has, but has classic Spider-Woman ever run into Venom and all those guys?
Actually, you know, I'm
To our
not
knowledge?
quite sure. Not gonna lie, I'm not sure about that.
It's like, you know, to your point, it's like there's a symbiote version of like every character in that movie. And like Hasbro did a whole line of like symbiote figures of like a Venom Captain America and Venom Spider, you know, like all of them having like the symbiote on them. So
like
yeah,
all of them.
I mean, the funniest thing is that like speaking of like 90s or late 80s kind of trying to be cool, the whole point of like the black suit Spider-Man before they even came up with the whole symbiote stuff was like, how do we make Spider-Man, who has this iconic costume, look cool? And they just, you know, painted him black, to quote the Rolling Stones. And then they were like, oh wait, we like his classic red and blue costume. What do we do with this black costume now? Let's make it an alien. That's kind of like the thinking of like how people wrote comics in the 80s, you know?
You know what? I think that's what it is for me, and this is just my personal problem. I really liked Spider-Man's black costume so much. I just wanted him to have that costume. So when it became associated with, oh, it's only going to be the evil guy's costume now, I guess that was a little break in my mind. But that's just me because I prefer that black costume on Spider-Man. So
yeah.
But
No, I wish like
costume.
we've never gotten an accurate black suit Spider-Man suit in live action, because if you remember Spider-Man 3, it was just his
I
regular
mean, it's a
costume black.
masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. I'm just joking.
No,
it
that's
has
Spider-Man 3 the
masterpiece moments.
Yeah, it does. Like
But not the black costume part. But
nothing beats Toby, you know, dancing in the middle of the street.
right.
No, but you know what I mean? Like, and then, you know, you had the Night Monkey costume that came, you know, that was like
Yeah.
Tom Holland's version of the black suit, I guess. And so he actually shows up in Venom. And then even Venom, because my like favorite thing about the black suit Spider-Man costume is that giant white spider.
Yeah.
And you know, we haven't seen that translated into live action yet.
And also, just to veer back into this slightly sexual, I just thought it makes him look really cool, and it looks really cool on his sort of, you know, lithe, slender body, especially because the white spider is really big. And then when it's on Venom, it's always going to be on that huge beefy body, which to me, you know, I have hang-ups about, you know, jocks in high school or whatever. Like I don't want to see the costume on that exact body. But again, that might just be my personal problem. Did you have other impressions of this trailer?
Well, just the last thing I want to say before we get to the Marvel proper universe trailer is that I was also, to your point, not a huge fan of Carnage. Like Carnage is one of those characters that, again, just kind of just to me screams Mountain Dew. Like that's what I'm thinking. Like playing a Sega Genesis, like it's just so 90s that character that I don't know. I'm not exactly thrilled to like go to the theater to watch a Carnage movie, because Carnage I always thought was like one of the dumbest characters in comics. He's like a symbiote that like kills people. Okay, isn't that what all symbiotes do? Like, no, but he does it in a more gruesome way.
Yeah. He's more extra and
extreme.
Yeah, but I kind of get cinematically because they're both like creepy, goopy monsters, and you know, there's some thrill in maybe.
Which was like the climax of the first one too, though. Like Riz Ahmed turns into a big gloopy symbiote.
Right. It's just a question of how many different ways can you depict symbiotes? How many flavors can you convey on screen?
Especially without the actual Spider-Man, right? Like this has the whole point of this is to build up to, whether it's Tom Holland or not, Spider-Man versus Venom, right? Like that's the thing.
Andrew Garfield, bring him back.
Yeah, before we get to like, did you guys hear like Andrew Garfield is like, no one's talking to me about anything? Do you think he's lying? Because Jamal was here. Jamal's had his whole conspiracy theory about, you know, Sony and Marvel trying to sweep it under the rug.
I think it's a huge lie because Alfred Molina straight up like ruined it when, as soon as they said that, like first that they I think only had announced Jamie Foxx at the time. So I was like, well, he's clearly coming back to play Electro. And then everyone's like, no, he's probably playing someone else. I'm like, no, it's Electro. And then they announced Alfred Molina. I'm like, oh yeah, they're doing what I think they're gonna do. And then the rumors started going around about like, you know, previous Spider-Man returning. I'm like, yeah, they're doing what I think. And everyone's like, no, it's not for sure. And then I'm like, and then Alfred Molina like totally spoiled it. So I'm just like, they're doing what I assume they're gonna do. So I feel like they're all lying because that's part of it, you know?
Right. Well, that's true. And I mean, Tom Holland is also notorious for like spoiling anything he's in. So that's probably why no one's talking to him.
Can I just add on to that we know they're lying because they're Peter Parker, and that's what Peter Parker does. He lies when people ask him if he's Spider-Man. Spider-Man is the one guy who maintains his secret identity, which means lying to people all the time. So clearly they're in it. They're just not going to say they're in it because they can't expose themselves and endanger their loved ones.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
and
a very good point.
Marvel snipers are hardcore.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to. Alfred Molina is so lucky that like, I don't know. As soon as he confirmed that whole entire thing, I was like, oh no.
What if by him spoiling it, they've gone back to the drawing board and they're reconfiguring Spider-Man 3 altogether?
Oh, then I'd be upset.
They're like, shit, we can't do this now. Thanks, Alfred.
I mean, I feel like soon as like they announce like certain castings, people are already gonna be like, that's a possibility. So I just feel like they should have known that people were going to be speculating that potential storyline, even if like say that's not the storyline they were gonna do. Just with that cast announcements alone, you know.
Well, let's talk about it since we're talking about that movie's actually in the MCU proper.
Yes,
it was part of this massive trailer. I guess, is it even a trailer? This like video that they sent out last week where they announced essentially their phase 4 of the MCU beyond the TV shows, right? Because this was a trailer that was about come back to the movie theaters, everybody.
Yes.
Stop watching our stuff on Disney Plus. Come and spend some money at the theater. And to that end, they finally showed some footage of a few movies that we've been clamoring for, and they revealed some titles that we had yet. Oh shit!
Oh, what the hell?
Aquafina's like, hey, don't forget about my Shang-Chi movie.
For those of you listening at home, Keith's Aquafina action figure just dropped physically onto his desktop from the sky. Where do you keep those things? Is it like a mobile hovering over your head?
Yeah, it helps me sleep at night.
Oh, good. Whatever gets you through the night. Yeah. I mean, she literally just dropped in.
Yeah,
that was funny.
Yeah, don't forget about Shang-Chi. Like
we can now. You were saying
the footage that we did see, in addition to some extra Shang-Chi footage, was footage from finally a week after she won the Oscar, Chloe Zhao's Eternals, and it looks very Chloe Zhao-y, if I do say so myself. Dominic, you have been clamoring for some Eternals goodness for over a year now. Are you like, this is not enough, I need more? Or were you just like, okay, I have enough now until November?
I thought that was real cool. And, you know, again, just to reiterate, the Eternals is a very challenging story problem for Marvel to pull off. I mean, like, it's, you know, their first batch of real new characters that people don't know about too well. They have to do a huge amount of world building as far as, you know, their gods or their, you know, superhuman, you know, mutates or whatever. They just have a lot of explaining to do, you know, just to get to get the premise, right? And that said, I think she can do it because she's real good. And also because, like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I was looking up a little bit. Like, I mean, the basic premise of Eternals, when, as I understood them, was they were just versions of the Greek and Roman gods, right?
Right. As evidenced by their names, right? Cersei,
right.
Artemis.
Weirdly spelled versions of Icarus, Mercury, that kind of stuff. But I think somewhere along the way, this probably happened in the comics also, they kind of brought it so the Eternals were the basis of all myths or many myths and or god traditions around the world. And that's a real interesting concept. I mean, to get it out of this sort of like Greek Roman, you know,
right.
you know, bucket and expand out to like, oh, maybe there are people all around the world that inspired all these different god traditions. And I think there's some evidence that that's the way she's going, and that could be really interesting.
So are they on par with like Asgardians, as you know, the way Asgardians were like the basis of Norse myths on the planet?
Right, that's another weird thing. They already have Asgardians, so now they're gonna like explain Eternals too. That's what makes it such a challenge.
I think they were, if I remember, because I just started recently reading the Neil Gaiman run from like I think 2006. I think they're they were made to destroy some other like army or something in space, and then they somehow kind of ended up on Earth, and then they were like seen as different, like you're saying, like basically like gods, because of they're basically super human-like, humanoid type of people who, you know, end up kind of becoming gods. And then I can't remember, but they make some promise on a hill, if I'm remembering correctly, that they're like, we can't reveal our identities, and they all forget everything, and then they kind of fall into like these different type of like roles in society. And then for more,
and they're like deep sleeper agents for a while.
And
I'm
they
sort
kind of don't know. And where I'm reading at, I've only read like I think the first two so far. Icarus, who's Richard Madden, aka Rob Stark, aka the True King of the North, is he's the only one who's aware of what in the comics where I'm at. So the movie might be different, but he's the only one aware, and he's like, he goes to which I believe is going to be Kit Harington's character,
the Black Knight.
Yeah, and he's like, he's a doctor.
He's like, brother.
Yeah, he's something like that. He's like, we know each other. We're like, we fought with each other. And Kit Harington's character's like, I don't know, this guy's, I think he's crazy. He needs to be on like mental hold like for a couple hours. And that's kind of where I'm at, where he's just like, I don't have time for this. I have student loans to pay, and this man is crazy. Like, that's Kit Harington's character, I think.
Many people could relate.
For the film, at least, Kevin Feige has confirmed that even though it's an ensemble movie, right? It's got Kumail Nanjiani, Angelina Jolie, but Kevin Feige revealed or confirmed that Gemma Chan's character Cersei will be the main character, like the one who we follow throughout, even though it's an ensemble piece. So like that's kind of cool, right? Gemma Chan is she went from being like fourth Kree soldier to the left to being like the main star of Eternal.
Yeah, so if they're giving her more of Icarus's responsibilities and that from like the Neil Gaiman run, that makes sense, because she's kind of like the next, after you're kind of introduced to Icarus and I can't remember, the Black Knight, is that his name? Then you're introduced to Cersei, and she's like, I think Cersei's a guy though. No, maybe not. No, Cersei's the one who's actually a girl.
I think she can shapeshift. Cersei is super powerful. She can do almost anything. I mean, in the comics.
Yeah, I think where I'm at, she's like trying to get some like parties secured for some like job or something like that. It seems a very fun, like social lit type of job that she's like working to secure, I think. But yeah, I need to get back into it and pick it up again. But it's really good. It's on Marvel Unlimited.
All I know is the 5 seconds of Eternals footage. You know, because for me, I wouldn't say it's a hard sell, but like I know even less of Eternals than what you guys are talking about, other than just like the basics. Like I've seen them, I've seen what their costumes look like. I have never read a single issue of an Eternals comic book, but I never read a Guardians of the Galaxy comic book either before that movie came out. So I don't think that Marvel's going to misstep here, and especially when they have someone with the talent Chloe Zhao, because like I said, the 5 seconds of footage that we did see was like, holy God, that's probably the most beautiful cinematography I've ever seen in a superhero movie, Martin, you know, not even just a Marvel movie. And the my favorite part of that though is that I think it was a Hollywood Reporter story or Variety story that came out last week. Kevin Feige was like so blown away by like the dailies he was getting, you know, because she was like filming on a beach with like a cliff and a sunset behind him, and he was like, you did all this in camera? Like, you can actually capture this without CGI? How is this even possible?
That's awesome.
It's like,
it's like back in the old days, this is how we shot movies.
That's just my favorite part of like this entire story, is just Kevin Feige's like bewilderment that photography is a thing.
And and
you don't want us to add an extra planet into the shot? No, man, we just shot the mountain. It looks cool.
Brittany, you were saying?
No, I think it comes from just the way those movies are probably like scheduled for filming, that they're like, okay, we gotta, you know, we don't have time to try to get a shot in the like golden hour, as they call it, you know, like that's probably what it is. And it's not that like, you know, I don't think it's so much like, oh, he's not aware with camera, but no, I think that's what it is, that their schedules with those films are very crazy, that they try to film like, you know, so many scenes in one day, That
And also, like, most of those shots are on like a mall parking lot in the middle of Atlanta,
Yeah.
and not
Right. Literally.
they're not able to go to a mountain or a beach because they're just shooting everything in
yeah, and I really like that they gave her the free reign into film on actual locations. And I mean, they do move around when they're filming for Marvel movies, as we know, but like they don't get that type of free range where they can be like, no, we have to start filming the scene at like 3 p.m. instead of, our day starts at 6 a.m. or whatever. That's probably what it is. She had a little bit more like free range. So I'm glad that, at least the first person who really got free range is an Asian woman and not like a white.
Well, I think Ryan got a lot of.
Yeah, Ryan did. He did. I think
Ryan Coogler. Well, speaking of Ryan Coogler, I want to touch on a couple other things from this announcement trailer that I think were super important. And the second thing that I wanted to talk about is the Black Panther sequel. We have a title. It's going to be called Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, and we see zero footage.
Yeah, because they haven't filmed.
Right. All we see is the title. But even the title and the word mark, Wakanda Forever, I don't know. I got probably more choked up seeing the title for Wakanda Forever than any other footage in the announcement video. What do you think that means? Because they've said they're not going to replace Chadwick Boseman. They're not going to replace T'Challa, or they're not going to recast T'Challa, as it were. What do you think this bodes for the sequel? How are we going to have a Black Panther sequel without Black Panther?
What I know from press releases and like interviews is that Ryan's plan is to focus on everyone else who we were introduced to in the first movie. That's not T'Challa, basically, and we are going to follow them. As of what are they going to do with T'Challa going forward? That would probably be in like a Black Panther 3 or something. And I don't know if they're hoping that by Black Panther 3 that they can actually do something with the mantle and people aren't going to be so, because I feel like for so many of us it's still very raw and fresh of losing Chadwick. I feel like it's really tough to figure out what to do with that particular character. I don't know. We probably might not. I don't know, because a lot of people are also kind of mad at what's her name, Letitia, right? So I don't know if she's gonna be Shuri as Black Panther.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Yeah.
It's a good title because it evokes an ensemble piece, and it was such a great catchphrase. Like an escapist catchphrase that you could say to people on the street.
And it's not something that was taken from the comics. I don't think. Like I don't recall Wakanda Forever being like a rallying cry before the film.
Can't remember. Could have been. Don't know, but it certainly was after the film.
Yeah, for sure. So the other thing about, the idea of replacing T'Challa or even recasting T'Challa, I know that there in some circles there has been a call for Marvel to recast the role because, I think the argument is that it's unfair that the lone Black superhero that it's become an icon that's on par with your Supermans and your Batmans and your Spider-Mans isn't able to continue just because the actor who portrayed it passed away. And the argument is that we've had like 7 Batmans, we've had 5 Supermans, we've had 3 Spider-Mans, right? Like we were just talking 5 minutes ago how there have been at least 3 actors to play Spider-Man. Why can't there be another actor that can just play the role of Black Panther the way, Val Kilmer and George Clooney swapped in from Michael Keaton in the Batman films? And, I have some issues with that argument, but before I, talk about that, I just want to think I don't know, one, have you heard that argument? And 2, what do you think about, just find another actor, because the character of T'Challa is too important to quote unquote kill him in the movies?
I don't know. I feel like some people might get mad at me, but
that's what this podcast is for, Brittany.
Yeah,
mad at us.
And it's not to say that the other people who have played these characters, who have had multiple people step in, aren't great actors. I think Chadwick is really probably, honestly, one of, if not the best actor we have so far seen in our generation. And he always just has brought so much to every single role that he's ever played. He really just embodies it so well that like I can't think of other people playing any of the characters that he's played. Like I can't think of anyone doing it better than him. And I think that's right now where so many people, for me, I'm like, it's not that I don't think that there are other good Black male actors out there. It's just they're not going to be able to hold a candle to what Chadwick did And we all know that. We know that every time another actor steps in a role, it's going to be a little different. But I think it's still too soon, because I'm going to be thinking about, no, he's not going to be as good as Chadwick. And it's not fair, I think, to another actor trying to step into that. That's a lot of pressure to, one, just make sure you're playing the character well, where people at least like you as a character. And then also making sure you're doing something that's different, where people aren't like, oh yeah, he's copying Chadwick, or he's not enough like Chadwick. Like, I think that's the issue right now, is like having too many people focusing on like if he's going to be like Chadwick or not. And that's, I think, an issue for an actor.
And I think it's also, this is the MCU problem, right? Because as I've stated multiple times on this podcast, the appeal of the MCU and what separates it from all these other would-be multi-cinematic universe franchises is that there is a connection between the audience, the character, and the actor who portrays that character, right? And that, like I said, Civil War meant something to the audience because it wasn't just Iron Man versus Captain America. It was Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man versus Chris Evans' Captain America, right? Like, if they had recast Chris Evans in Civil War,
it wouldn't have hit the same.
It wouldn't have hit as hard. That was the Batman v Superman problem, right? It was like a Superman we'd seen a couple movies, and then a brand new Batman, and people were like, well, I don't give a shit about this Batman because it's not the Batman I've been watching for 10 years. Whereas Chris Evans, I've been watching this guy for 10 years, and now, this is the secret sauce of the MCU, is that it's like a TV show. We follow these particular actors playing these roles. And it's not like Batman and Superman in the past, or even the Joker. Joker's a great example. Heath Ledger passed away, and there have been like 3 other actors who've played the Joker since, right? But those movies aren't connected. Like, the appeal of the Joaquin Phoenix Joker or Suicide Squad isn't that it's connected to the Heath Ledger movies. They're their own separate things. And I think what folks and I understand why folks are arguing that we can't lose T'Challa as an icon, as a character, just because the actor who portrays him is gone. Because they use the Joker analogy, they use the Batman analogy. But the MCU is different and apart from that, because in a vacuum, yes, I think we need as many T'Challa movies as possible. But because we're operating within the premise of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where we follow these, like, that's why, when Robert Downey Jr. says I'm done, or Chris Evans says I'm done, they're not just recasting Iron Man and Captain America. They're actually dealing with the fallout of, like, we don't have these actors anymore. So what does the world look like without these actors?
I agree with all that, Keith, except I think in this specific case, I'm going to recuse myself from thinking about Black Panther 2, who's who, and that, because I think whatever Ryan Coogler comes up with will be a better idea than anything we're thinking about anyway. And that sounds fanboy, slavish, but like, I mean, like, in the case of, the imagination and skill he's demonstrated so far, he's going to come up with something better than what we're thinking of.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we forget, like, Black Panther, the movie could have been just okay. It could have been Ant-Man. It could have been just okay. It would be fine. But the fact that over-delivered with so much should be enough to inspire trust in this particular filmmaker handling this part of the Marvel story. So to me, it doesn't matter who they cast. I'm waiting to see what he does.
Yeah.
And his ensemble and his crew.
No, right. I think that's absolutely right. And I think, to Brittany's point earlier, maybe by Black Panther 3, maybe in another world when they open up a multiverse and they don't have to be so tied to continuity, because this is the gift and curse of continuity, right? Like, when you put all of your chips on, like, there's a single linear continuity that we're dealing with. This was the Star Wars problem, right? When Carrie Fisher died, they couldn't just recast Princess Leia, right? Like, Rise of Skywalker, or at least whatever episode, not Duel of the Fates, was predicated on the fact that Carrie Fisher would be Princess Leia and carry that movie.
She had a big, cool part.
And that's when you put all of your chips in continuity. If something happens to the actor, it's not an easy flip, right? Because again, because he's such an important character, you can't do that. You can do it with characters who didn't resonate, right? Like, we had 2 Rhodys, we had 2 Bruce Banners, because people didn't really give a shit about Terrence Howard and Ed Norton.
3.
Yeah,
I'm just saying in the continuity of the MCU, right?
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. Yeah, we've got many more Bruce Banners beyond just the 2 in the MCU. But in terms of just like how, we deal with, like, recasting within the MCU, because if you use that argument, well, they recast War Machine or they recast Incredible Hulk, but that's because they didn't resonate with people. Like I said earlier, if you recast Chris Evans, people aren't going to. That's what the whole John Walker story in Falcon Winter Soldier was all about, recasting Captain America and it being less than. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. And then also goes to like just the character of John Walker versus like Steve Rogers, but still, yeah. It's like no, and yeah.
No, I get all that, and I pretty much agree with you. It's dicey, except that I just have confidence that Coogler is going to come up with something real cool.
Yeah.
No, I think he's going to do something great. I'm not doubting Ryan Coogler. I just don't know even if he does something cool and great, I don't know if I'm still ready to accept someone else in the shoes of T'Challa.
And to your point too, like I don't know how to watch a 2.5-hour movie set in Wakanda without Chadwick Boseman. Like I just don't know like how to feel about. Like I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just like I'm not prepared for how they'll deal with the fallout of Chadwick dying. You know what I mean? Like they said they're not going to use CGI. They're not going to bring him back like Paul Walker style.
Yeah, and I'm going to say even with the use of leftover footage from The Force Awakens and for The Rise of Skywalker, I really do love Carrie Fisher and I loved her Princess Leia so much, but I feel like them trying so hard to work a story around old footage hindered that movie a lot.
It was a little creepy.
And
I don't think Coogler's going to do this, right? Like that's
that's why I hope, and I just feel like, I get it. You're in this weird place of we don't want to kill off the character because that's not what our story was ever going to present. But then you're like, I don't want to recast them, but it's like we can't obviously use them. And I hate to say it, but like I do feel like they should have just had Princess Leia die in the beginning of the film because it hindered the film trying to like work around this old footage of her that just. You could tell when she wasn't really talking to certain people, and it was just like, and I understand that they were trying to make the best out of the situation they could, but no, I think that it really hindered the movie. So that's why I'm like, I hope they don't do that with Chadwick, as you're saying they're not going to, but I don't know. It's a really tough like situation.
Hopefully the Disney synergy heads took that lesson.
The other film I wanted to touch on before we wrap from the announcement was the Captain Marvel sequel, which also got a new title, which reveals some really cool things about that sequel. And it's no longer called Captain Marvel 2, but The Marvels. Maybe it's a Motown movie.
Remember, he makes that Marvelettes joke at the end of Captain Marvel. I thought that they're not going to call it the Marvelettes, obviously, but it like harkens to that joke.
So we have the S in the Marvels is from Kamala Khan's costume. It looks like we have Monica Rambeau's logo inside. So clearly they're saying, and part of the announcement was the sequel is going to star Teyonah Parris and Iman Vellani as the other Captains Marvel, as it were, which is we've all been like predicting ever since they announced the Ms. Marvel TV show, and we saw Monica on WandaVision. But now just have it confirmed.
Yes,
I'm very giddy, and I know Dominic, you already loved Captain Marvel 1. Does this amp your excitement for Captain Marvel 2 through the roof?
Yeah, I really love Captain Marvel, and I know maybe it's not the most popular among the fan base, whatever. And but I adore it. And there are a couple interesting things to take away from that title reveal. I mean, part of it is like, I know it seems like maybe the Marvel and DC movie verses are now just enjoying like taking the piss out of each other. But like, of course, as a comic fans, it immediately evokes, oh, weren't the Marvels family on the DC side? Oh, but then they had to change their name to be Shazam. So now Marvel obviously is saying, oh, we'll have our own branded team just called the Marvels. Did anyone do that before? DC? Nope, never heard of it. But that's just like a whatever comic insider joke. But
they should find some way to bring Zachary Levi just to like have a walk on. Not
Shazam,
just but he should just walk on somehow.
Yeah, he should be the villain.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, just conceptually, it's incredibly exciting because of that team: Carol Danvers and Monica Rambeau and Kamala Khan. 3 very different types of people who have been some version of Captain Marvel over the years. And you've got the young old dynamic, got the people of different races dynamic, and it could be great. And also, I just gonna sidetrack for a second. It was interesting in looking over the slate of those reveals that they kind of ended with what I consider the two funny ones in the Marvel universe. Because there's, I for context, I'm saying this because there's some question about what like the next event is, what the next sort of end game type event is. So if you look at that sequence, so we're not saying that sequence is set in stone because titles change. It was originally called Avengers Infinity War 2, and pandemics happen. Those things change. But so it ends with like Ant-Man and Guardians of the Galaxy, which we consider the sort of like light comedy part of the Marvel Universe wing. However, preceding that, there's Black Panther 2 and the Marvels, which I would consider the sort of grand cosmic scope of the Marvel wing. So I wonder if the next big event, where hopefully we meet Galactus, actually, culminates in the Marvels. Just wondering out loud.
Well, to your point, the last image we actually see in the announcement is not Guardians of the Galaxy or Ant-Man, but it's a circle that turns into a 4.
And or an X, kinda, right?
if you tilt your head to the left. And that 4, for all we know, is just referencing Phase 4, right?
Yeah, for all we know.
For all we know.
Yeah, some graphic designer really earned their money that day.
If we do see a planet-eating monster, not a cloud, hopefully, show up at the end of the Marvels, maybe that is the big, instead of culminating in an Avengers movie, because that's the one thing that was not announced. There was no Avengers 4, or I guess 5. We're at 5 now, right?
And I was wrong. I thought it was going to be Secret Invasion, but I assume Secret Invasion is coming out a little bit earlier.
And that's a TV show. And that's just a TV show.
It can't really be the culminating event. Maybe there won't be one, but I think they got to be planning one. Anyway, sorry, I went on that sidetrack.
Yeah, no, that's not. I mean, that's totally relevant, because I think, the last thing we want to touch on is this notion that they keep hinting at this Fantastic Four movie. They haven't casted it. We have no idea like how they're going to factor into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but clearly that's the thing that Kevin Feige has been itching to do for a long time, ever since they got access to the Fox franchises. Do we want to see a Fantastic Four movie in the MCU? If so, what will they get right that Tim Story and Josh Trank could not get right with the Fantastic Four?
Well, the whole, I think a lot of people don't realize is that with the Josh Trank one, that was the studio being like, we don't want to lose the rights to Fantastic Four. So they were trying to hurry up and make, I remember if they didn't start filming by, I think, a certain time in the year that they were filming, that the following month or two or something like that, it would the rights to Fantastic Four was going to revert to actual Marvel and Disney. So I don't think a lot of people know that behind the scenes stuff of that film. It was Fox trying to beat the clock of it going back and losing the rights. That's why they made that movie. And I feel like that's why the movie is probably as terrible as it is because they were just trying to hurry up and let's make sure we don't lose the rights. And then it did so bad they were just like, okay.
We don't want them anymore.
I really like parts of that Fantastic Four movie, I gotta say. I might be the only one. There's lots of parts of it I like.
Well, I'll say that I recently rewatched the first Fantastic, not the first one, not the Roger Corman one, but the first Tim Story one from 2005 with Jessica Alba, Chris Evans, Ian Griffith, and Michael Chiklis. And I have to say, it wasn't that bad.
It's a fun movie.
Yeah, it was actually kind of fun. I mean, it came out in 2005, the same year Batman Begins came out. And I think what people forget is that, pre-Batman Begins, comic book movies weren't taken. It reminds me of a Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie.
They were a little lighter in tone.
Yeah, it didn't take itself so seriously. And this is something Brittany and I were talking about before we started recording about Venom. It's what I actually appreciate about the sequel trailer is that it isn't I could see a world in which the Venom movies would be this self-serious kind of broody, grimdark for real. You know what I mean? And I like that it's kind of taking itself not so seriously, because that's the vibe of those early 2000s comic book movies. And that first Fantastic Four movie, honestly, I had a lot of fun rewatching it. I was like, why do people shit on this movie so much? It's kind of fun. And Chris Evans is amazing in this. He's
I've always really liked that movie. I don't know. I was 15 when that movie came out. And that's one of my favorite from the old superhero movies released from around then. That's one of my favorites. And a lot of people are probably gonna hate me for this, but Elektra is also another one of my favorites from then.
Wow. Is it because you're part Greek?
Maybe.
Because wow. I wish I could go there with you on Elektra.
I don't know about Elektra, but I didn't hate Ben Affleck's Daredevil when it came out.
I
Like,
didn't
haven't
either. I have it
revisited
on
it, but
DVD.
yeah.
Wait, all this 2005 and before love, and you guys will still not give me Josh Trank's Fantastic Four has its moments.
No.
One, no.
Yeah.
The Human Torch and and his sister, they're like one of them's adopted. That's cute.
I mean,
They have this
I
funny
think
scene about it.
I think it bothered me because I'm like, why can't Sue also be black? And I think that's why like that bothers me. Is like I get that there's adoptive families that exist like that, but at the same time, it just was like it felt like they were holding on to the black women can't have blonde hair, so Sue Storm has to stay white. When it's like no,
when Kate Mara clearly couldn't have blonde hair either because she's got some terrible ass wigs in that movie.
But yeah, that's what I think. I think it
It's
bothers
enough to
me,
make a woman want to turn invisible. All this judging of appearance.
Well, and speaking of Invisible Woman, and I remember like a lot of the fanboy talk back in the day with that first Fantastic Four movie about Jessica Alba, like in retrospect, was like just racism and misogyny.
Yeah.
That was unusual casting too.
You know what I'm saying? But it's like this notion like, oh, she's just a Maxim model. How can she be like a nuclear physicist? Like that was the main complaint against Jessica Alba. And then like her blue contacts and blonde hair look so unnatural when like, back then I guess folks didn't realize she was Latina or whatever. You know what I'm saying? But like looking back at the kind of like fanboy, there wasn't a word for it, right? We didn't call it toxic fandom, but that's what that was too. This idea that like Jessica Alba as Sue Storm, that's so ridiculous. And it was like, again, rewatching it is like, she's not bad. She's actually pretty good in this. I mean, the only thing that I think both films get really wrong is they just don't know what to do with Dr. Doom.
Yeah.
In either version.
I feel like he was I can't remember the actor's name, but I feel like he was a great cast. And like anytime I see him in anything else, I'm like, Dr. Doom.
But he's the nip and tuck guy. I don't remember his name, like Julian something.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I don't know why like Dr. Doom is one of the most iconic Marvel villains, and both live action versions, they can't figure out like how to just make him like a evil despot of Latveria. Why do they gotta make him like a corporate CEO or like a tech bro? Like why can't he just be a guy with a metal mask who rules a nation?
I don't know. Hopefully they will like actually let him just be that. If they better. I don't know. My choice I feel like people are gonna be like, this is really left field, but for Dr. Doom, Orlando Bloom.
Because it rhymes. Dr. Bloom. That's because I always thought he was kind of evil. That's my first movie, so I'm with that.
Especially in Elizabethtown, like that dude.
Yeah. Something else, just because Asian Pacific Heritage Month, it was really cool to see after the re-announcement of Black Widow is going to come out. I almost feel sorry for the Black Widow movie at this point, but it's okay. That the next two, again, new introductions of characters are going to be Shang-Chi and the Eternals, and I think it'll be a real interesting like diptych for people, again, learning to talk about Asian and Asian American stuff, because we've sort of said it on this show before, but just to reiterate, Shang-Chi is an Asian American story told by an Asian American filmmakers and ensemble. And Chloe Zhao, who's now getting all the awards in the world, she's Chinese born, and I think in that way she might not feel the matrix of Asian American issues that we feel here in the States, but she definitely feels some of the Chinese issues because she's getting it for the Chinese government. So with those two movies coming out in sequence, it just might find other people for an opportunity for people to be able to distinguish between Chinese and Chinese American and that whole scope of things. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that stuff.
No, I think it's an exciting time. I had been saying for some time now that like since Endgame, I've felt a little kind of like, that was the series finale. I'm like everything that's been coming out since Endgame has felt like spinoffs. But I have to say, this announcement trailer that came out and their phase 4, I'm starting to buy in again. I'm starting to come back, even though like I was ready to bid adieu to the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I never was.
That's interesting. No, I'm with it because I'm not totally sold on the TV shows. I'm not that with the TV shows yet. I'm a diehard Marvel nerd / jerk. So yeah, I also get excited. But I mean, just lightning round, I would just want to know, what are you looking forward to? Like, what do you hope will happen? What do you most hope will happen somewhere in those next 8 movies?
I get cast as Spider-Woman Jessica Drew.
That's a good one. And let's hope that happens.
I really, really want them to do a Valkyrie and Misty Knight team up. Like, I'm just itching for that
Right on.
to happen, even though that's like very probably far-fetched and not gonna happen. I don't know. I'm kind of excited to see if they really are gonna introduce a multiverse. And because we know they're doing Deadpool 3. Like, they've announced it. It's for real. Like, they're doing Deadpool 3. So like, I want to see how Deadpool is gonna fall into it, because I just love Ryan Reynolds there. I don't know. I love him. I'm excited for everything going forward, and still worried about what they're going to do with the Black Panther stuff, but I'm excited for that. And obviously my very favorite, King of Mischief, Loki, is moving to Wednesday nights, June 9th.
Oh, right.
Just so you guys know, I'm very excited. I'm honestly kind of worried that they're saying that's the time, and then all of a sudden they're going to be like, Loki just released like 3 weeks early. Like, I don't know. I just feel like they're trying so hard to lean into the chaos of Loki with it, that I feel like there's going to be a chaotic release with it.
Yeah, maybe. I would answer that. I think, to just jump off what Brittany just said about the multiverse, I think, you were talking about the sequence. It's right. It's Black Widow and then the 2 Asian movies. But then the next 2 movies after that is Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, which for all intents and purposes will be what opens up the multiverse.
Sure.
And going back to what we were saying about Black Panther, there's your option if you do need to recast T'Challa without replacing Chadwick Boseman. Is that if Spider-Man and Doctor Strange does open up a multiverse where you can reach into different universes, there is a universe out there where there is a T'Challa Black Panther who could maybe come in.
I would kind of like it if it's like Denzel Washington and he's like an older T'Challa from a different universe.
Old
like
man
that.
T'Challa.
That I might actually really like, be like, all right, I can do that.
And then you could always cast John David as like young version of T'Challa from that universe.
Oh my goodness.
And then it's a time travel. It's like
it would also
movement.
Cross over to the Christopher Nolan version.
It's really the Tenet
because
sequel.
Of weird physics.
I love Tenet.
No,
but I think there's your. It's like what DC's doing with the Flash, right? Like, that's your out. If you want to kind of reconfigure your cinematic universe, you use the multiverse, right? So I'm not saying that's what they're going to do. Like what Dominic said earlier, whatever Ryan's thinking of is 1,000 times more clever than what I could possibly imagine. So, but I'm just thinking, like, it's interesting to me that those 2 movies are back to back, right? Like, it's No Way Home and then Multiverse of Madness, and both movies. I mean, Multiverse of Madness is clearly dealing with the multiverse.
Oh yeah.
And No Way Home has been heavily hinted at being a multiverse. So that's what I'm excited to see how Marvel will take the multiverse angle. And also because I've been saying that DC should be doing a multiverse to like distinguish itself from Marvel, and like they finally caught on, but now it's too late because Marvel's going to beat them to it, because the Flash isn't going to come out for probably another 2, even though they're already filming, which is crazy. Like, the Flash has been in production hell for like 5 years. They're actually shooting right now, but they're going to get beat to the punch by Marvel yet again. And as a longtime DC fanboy, it does kind of hurt a little bit, but
that's what I'm saying. They're just trolling each other at this point, and DC needs to learn how to troll back.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, I think their issue is because they yo-yo back and forth between like, let's do what Marvel's doing, let's not do what Marvel's doing. So then it's like they released a female fronted superhero movie first, but then they're like, and then they just yo-yo back and forth between not like competing with Marvel to like, yeah, we're competing with Marvel and we're going to do what Marvel's doing. No, we're not going to do what Marvel's doing. And it's just this, and I think that's what's really messed them up, is that they don't know what to do. So I feel like that's why they're unpopular. Yeah.
Well, we're going to leave it there. Stay tuned after the break. You'll hear my conversation with Jerry Ma. We're going to be talking about his Kickstarter, Monkey King, A Chinatown Odyssey. And after that, it'll be us nerd popping and signing off. Joining me now on the podcast is an old buddy. We met 15 years ago. Jesus. It's crazy.
Wizard World Philadelphia, baby.
Wizard World Philly. I wanted to get some water, and he gave me a glass of sake and a Bruce Lee t-shirt. 15 years later, my man is killing it on Kickstarter, his Monkey King graphic novel, fully funded in less than 24 hours.
In less than 48 hours. I think it was like 36 hours or something like that.
Whatever.
But the huge thing was it was a project that they loved in like 3 hours, which was
Yeah, there you go. Pornsec and I were talking about like how we should have made a bet that it would get funded in 24 hours. Anyway, I am so happy to have Jerry Ma of Epic Proportions joining us on Hard Knock Life. What's up, Jerry?
What's up, Keith? It's kind of awesome to be doing this with you.
You don't have to lie. How you doing, man? It's pandemic times, but you're out here still creating, still putting books out in the world.
The pandemic kind of put a lot of things in perspective, I think, for many of us. I think, and this is not to fault anyone for not trying to be productive, but at least, I hate to say this, but when it first began, the lockdown, I should say, not the pandemic. The pandemic is a terrible thing for obvious reasons, but when the lockdown started happening, my family, we have a small business, so we were extremely affected by the lockdown. But I was secretly kind of happy to have the lockdown because I was kind of excited to finally not have any responsibilities, and just have all day, every day to focus on whatever the hell I wanted to do. And what I wanted to do was draw. So the lockdown genuinely helped me on a selfish personal note. Obviously the pandemic did not help me, but the lockdown helped me, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. Like, a lot of people are, struggling with the idea of working from home. I've worked from home for like a decade. It's like not a big deal for me. Like, I see people like, I just want to go back to the office. Like, I don't even know what an office looks like. But I get why it's, for some people it's a struggle, but for, other people, I think it's awakened something, right? Like, productivity doesn't have to go away just because you don't go to an office. You know what I mean? And I think if you're an artist, you can really just, like you said, hunker down and concentrate.
I mean, it's funny because obviously I'm friends with a lot of, freelance illustrators, and just talking to like Cliff and Bernard, it's like, how you guys doing? And they just kind of giggle like, yeah, it's kind of the same exact thing for us. We're still at home just drawing.
Yeah. Now my spouse is at home with me. That's the biggest difference. So the Monkey King, this is a project that you've been working on for a while, but it wasn't always a comic book. How did it start out, and how did you decide I'm going to turn this like gallery show into a graphic novel?
So yeah, I guess technically it began, I want to say mid 2019, summer of 2019. I don't know why. What I decided that in 2019, and you're gonna laugh, that 2020 was gonna be my year, and that in 2020 I was gonna, to finally get some art shows. I've been offered to have like solo art shows in the past, but they're like, nothing fancy. But I've had offers, but I've always turned them down because it seemed like the last thing I want to do is have like a crappy solo art show, And I've had actually solo art shows at Lincoln Center for the New York Asian Film Festival, which I was like, I'm okay with just doing those until I get something that I think is cool, But then Pearl River came along and they feature Asian American artists, and they gave me the spot for Lunar New Year of 2020. And I was like, finally, it's happening. 2020 is going to be awesome. So I was in Taipei with Bernard Chang, sorry. And, we were there for a comic convention, and I just started working on my Monkey King series. And I'm like, I'm going to totally do the Monkey King in Chinatown, New York. And it's going to be like 80s, 90s New York, where it's a little dirty and grimy, but it's going to be the Chinatown that I grew up loving, with the tic-tac-toe playing chicken and everything, And then in 2020, one of the three things I got to do in 2020 was I had my art show for Pearl River, and it was pretty cool. And, what kind of, during the setup of the show in the gallery, Pearl River lent me some of their employees. I want to say like 3 mid-20s. And I was asking if they'd ever read or watched The Monkey King. They're like, no. And I was like, why not? They're like, well, we see all the reboots, but they're kind of crappy, because they always do just, essentially they turn The Monkey King into a really cliche and corny kung fu movie, right? All the new reboots, that's what they do. And they were saying, if there was a version like yours where it was more relatable to us, we might be interested. And I was just like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, I got a life to live. I can't like dedicate time to making a comic for no reason, Then obviously the pandemic hit, the lockdown goes down. And I was like, well, shit, I guess I got the time to do this.
So this isn't your first Kickstarter project. You know, I see one right behind you actually. Like what do you think what is it about Kickstarter in particular that you feel has been beneficial to you as a comic book creator? Cuz like, you know, I don't know if this is still true anymore, but I remember reading something a few years ago like Kickstarter is like the number 3 comic book publisher in the world just because of like the amount of comics that get published because of Kickstarter.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's things like Patreon, Indiegogo. I'm sure there's more than, those two and Kickstarter. But Patreon to me feels a little, and this is not to knock anyone that does Patreon, God bless them, but for me.
Yeah, please go to the Patreon Nerds of Color, please.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/Nerds of Color.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and I fully support, like, I'm all about independent arts and being creative because it's hard to be creative and it's hard to be artistic, But for me, Patreon doesn't make much sense for me personally because I'm not going to offer Patreon members anything different than what I'm doing anyway. So it just feels like I'm begging for money.
Yes, again, I'm begging for money. Patreon.com/Nerds of Color. Please throw me whatever you can. Patreon.com.
Well, you offer a service that, see, it's different. You offer a service that you wouldn't be able to do without Patreon. I genuinely mean that. For me, I'm just going to keep drawing regardless, So that's why Patreon for me just doesn't make any sense.
But I mean, beyond just like crowdfunding though, right? Like, I guess in these times, you don't feel the need to like go to like an Image Comics or a Dark Horse Comics or like even an indie publisher like anymore, right? Like when you have Kickstarter, you don't even need to worry about like even the independent comic book publishers.
I'm not a young guy anymore. Marvel and DC and Dark Horse, they've had plenty of years to hire me. And they just, look, I'm just being honest. Like they've never been interested in hiring me. So I don't see what's changed.
Well, I mean, but like, fuck Marvel and DC. Like we don't even care. But like, just as like going through Kickstarter versus going through like an indie comics publisher, like what is the difference?
The difference is that there's no rules. When I do Kickstarter, I can do exactly what I want. If I decide that I want to have these guys fishing for arowana in the sky and not in the water, I'm going to do it. And that's exactly what I did, If I decide that I want, like, on page 1 of the book, there's going to be a little kid urinating on the street, I'm going to do it. And that's what I did on page 1. So I get to do exactly what I want with Kickstarter. I truly, genuinely, wholeheartedly believe in the Kickstarter platform when used properly. It's kind of lame, in my opinion, that like Top Cow is using it, or like all these publishers that really don't need it. And it's cool that like look, even when guys like Scott Snyder, who could self-publish anything he wants, but I understand why he's using Kickstarter, and I think it's great even for guys like him to use Kickstarter because it gives him the opportunity to sell it to people that he wouldn't normally reach. Now, Kickstarter, for me, I'm not selling that many copies no matter what. Like this is going to be, this Monkey King Kickstarter is going to clearly be my most successful one. But it gives me the platform to genuinely reach an audience that's going to help me create something that I could not do on my own. Or I could do it, but no one would ever know about it.
Right.
So it's, when used properly, it really is like, in its purest form, an amazing thing. That's what I genuinely think.
And I feel like it's the kind of thing that it's very like 2020, 2021. Like, had this thing existed 10 years ago, 15 years ago, imagine, like, but if you think about it, like, what we did with Secret Identities in 2009, like, before,
harder.
Yeah. I mean, how did we even do that? It's just crazy to think back on that time. Before, I mean, the internet, of course, existed, but the internet didn't exist the way it exists now, right? It was like
just think about being able to Zoom each other back then, like how that would have changed our meetings. Seriously,
yeah.
We were literally just like, how do we call 4 people at the same time?
I didn't even have an iPhone yet, right? I was like on a fucking flip phone. Like,
there was no.
I don't have three-way calling on this.
We
phone.
put out an open call for submissions without social media. Think about that. Like
it's
that's
wild.
Like. Trying to do that now seems impossible,
Yeah. No, not at all. I mean, and just that's what I mean. Like the whole landscape has changed, right? Like if you think about what brought us together in 2008, 2009.
Well, it was you. You're the one. Seriously.
It was on me.
No, like
exactly.
I don't know if you get enough credit for that.
I don't.
I think it was kind of all you, right?
Well, not really. I mean, kind of. Well, at least Jeff reached out to me for an interview for when he was writing for the San Francisco Chronicle. And then we just got to talking, and then we're like, we should do a book together. But then, Jeff and I are like the least talented comics people in the world. Like, we can't draw for shit.
Well, I would make an argument that you guys are not, but okay.
And then, and this was 2006, so it took 3 years before the book came out. And then you and I met, as you said, Wizard World Philly, and I was like the 20th guy that I'm sure pitched you a comic book idea, and that day, and then that's just what you just happened to like, jive with the idea, and that's what brought us, the three of us, together first, and then I don't even know how Perry jumped on board. I know exactly how. We put that open call out that you said. And Perry Shen of Better Luck Tomorrow was the first person to like respond, and we were like, we're not only going to take your pitch, Perry, but we're going to make you do all of the heavy lifting when it comes to like operations logistics.
I still remember Perry was telling me, he was talking to his wife Kim afterwards, after he got the call with us. He's like, yeah, I don't know what really happened. I pitched them an idea, and I think I'm part of the editorial team now.
Yeah, man. Not only is your pitch amazing, but we're gonna ride your Hollywood coattails, Bear. Yeah, that was 15 years ago, 2006. It's wild to think like how long it's been. But like the landscape has changed. The reason we came together is we were like, Asian American superheroes. You ever heard of one? We're like, nope.
I mean, really, even today, there's not that many, even with Shang-Chi.
But it has changed though, right? Because now we're in a world where like there's a fucking Shang-Chi movie. There's like the Warriors show on TV that your friend Perry Young is a part of, who's been on the podcast. Snake Eyes coming out with like 2 Asian American leads. I'm fucking happy about that. I'm so happy about that. That, like we're in it's a different world for like Asian American representation.
And Kickstarter, honestly, Kickstarter has a large part in that, in my opinion, because it gives people like me the chance to do this,
Yeah. No, and I think that's absolutely right. Like Camilla Jang, who used to be a part of Kickstarter for a long time, was champion not just the comics, but like comics by people of color, comics by Asian Americans. But I mean, what do you think accounts for this like boom in like Asian American representation, specifically in like the genre places, right? Like not just in Hollywood, but like, one of the things that was the driving force behind Secret Identities is that we knew Jim Lee, we knew Bernard Chang, we knew Cliff Chang, we knew that there were so many Asian American creators, but the characters were never Asian American. But now that's changing. Like right when Gene Yang is writing a book, he's writing a book with Asian American characters. He's doing the Chinese Superman. Like what do you think accounts for that like change in how people perceive Asian superheroes?
I mean, it just takes time. Like our generation, as we get older, we kind of get a little more frustrated with things like that. So we're going to put our foot down a little bit harder as time goes on, right? Then we tell the next generation about the problems, the things that we've been dealing with, and then they will make, the correct changes. That's what I truly believe. Like, look, man, we toured how many schools? We spoke to how many college kids? Those college kids are young professionals now. You don't think that this is occupying their headspace, They're now in a position to make a difference. And I mean, I'm not saying, it's all because of us, but I would like to think our generation of Asian Americans, it's because of our generation of Asian Americans that spoke to those 18-year-olds back, whatever that is, 15 years ago. Well, guess what? They're not 18 anymore.
Right. Wow, that's even wilder to think about. Like those college
like, think
kids
about that.
When we toured, or like in their 30s now. Like some of them are in the decision making. I'm sure at like
they're the ones that are contributing to all these people of color coming to the front finally.
Right. Well, I mean, Jerry, like I could probably talk to you forever. I do want to give you an opportunity to plug the Monkey. Not that you need it, but you've already reached your goals. But you have stretch goals, and I think what's admirable about your stretch goals is that the extra money that you're getting from Kickstarter is not going in to like line your pockets. You're going to line the pockets of businesses in Chinatown. Talk about what your stretch goals are and why you've decided to do that instead of like, again, enriching your liquor collection.
Well, I am not, as you know, I am not the most strategically thinking person. I'm very emotionally based, So back in mid-March when the shootings happened in Atlanta, Georgia at the spa, like most Asian Americans, I got pretty angry. And I remember I was talking to Bernard Chang about this. And I was like, fuck it, man. I'm just gonna, no one really cares about what I'm gonna do, but I'm going to donate all the money from my online sales for the rest of this month to Stop Asian Hate. So it was pretty cool. I did not realize how much work was involved with doing something like that, but I ended up donating like $2,409, like just under $2,500 to the GoFundMe AAPI website. And you click the button and you're like, awesome. But then it's like, it feels a little hollow. I'm not gonna lie to you, because you don't really see anything being done. You don't even know where your money's going, to be quite frank. Like, for all I know, I just donated to like some racist person,
Right.
And then again, like as a small business owner, I understand, like whenever people say, oh, New York's getting all this money to small business, I'm like, no, we're not. Like, I didn't get a penny, So I was talking to Jeff Darrow, and every creator, everyone that's
name drop number 2. Sorry.
Well, this is a big deal, though. This is actually huge, because every creator that's helped me out with this Kickstarter, I've been paying. And Jeff Darrow was, I've known Jeff now for, I don't know, quite some time. He's done 2 T-shirts with me. He's done a drawing for my first Kickstarter book, Legend, and he's drawing a variant cover for the Monkey King book. And I was going to overpay Jeff, because I felt like it's about time. I'm getting older. I finally can't afford to pay these guys like proper salaries, Jeff calls me. He lives in France, so he calls me at all odd hours, like 4 a.m., 5 a.m., And he's one of the sweetest guys you ever talk to. But he called me and he was concerned, because he's like, look, I'm a white guy. This is the Monkey King. He's like, I love the Monkey King. He's like, I just saw you donate money to Stop Asian Hate. It's like, I've made a lot of money off the Asian culture. It's like, I don't want to get paid. It's like, we're friends. So you take my money and you donate it to Stop Asian Hate. So then I was like, Jeff, that's pretty fucking awesome of you. I was like, I'm going to take you up on that, just FYI. Then I was like, but here's the thing. It felt a little hollow donating that money. So what do you think if I just, me with my emotional decision making, this is done in like over the phone with Jeff Darrow. I'm like, I'm just going to fucking walk into stores. I'm going to walk into small businesses and just hand them cash. And he just started laughing. He's like, you think they're going to take you seriously? I was like, I don't know, but I'm going to do it. Like, fuck it, I'm doing it. That's what I'm doing. Those are the stretch goals, goddammit. Just like that. I'm like, those are my goddamn stretch goals. I was like, you don't think I can do it? I'm totally going to do it.
And there you are. Like, I mean, you've already reached one stretch goal, right?
Yeah, and I'm like just like $300 shy of the second stretch goal. And between you and me, here's a little secret. Those stretch goals are there as a formality. That's just to set a benchmark for people to see. I'm doing it to more than whatever. I don't even know how many businesses I put on the stretch goals, but I intend to. I'm going to give a lot more than whatever I have listed on the Kickstarter. Like I said, this is why I like Kickstarter. I can do whatever the fuck I want. So if I decide I'm going to give more money than I'm supposed to small businesses, then I'm going to fucking do it, and that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Speaking of weird shit on Kickstarter, one of your rewards is actually like doing this for people. Like literally, what is it, like $500? Was that the tier?
I thought
someone actually paid for it. That's like, so just so you know, one of the rewards, quote unquote, is that you get to hop on a Zoom with me, Jerry, Jeff Yang, and Perry Shen, the Secret Identities creators, and like drink, I guess. I don't know, but like someone actually paid for that, and I'm just like, what is wrong with you? What is wrong? Who wants to pay money to do this? I don't know.
Well, so I reached out to the guy that actually backed it, and I don't know about other Kickstarters, but I'm very proactive when it comes to talking to the people that I'm very grateful for each backer. So I wanted to thank them, especially anyone that backs each reward tier, like the first person to do it. I absolutely am going to reach out to them. So I reached out to him, and he coincidentally listens to the stream that I'm on with Bernard and Sean Chen. And he's heard a little bit about the whole process, and he's just like, dude, this is a great thing that you're doing, and I just, I want to support. I want to make sure each reward gets back, like that, and he's just the man,
Yeah,
I'm going to say his name.
That's awesome.
Yeah, D. Rogers. Thank you, man. You're the man.
Well, and you know what? Thanks to you, it's going to be the first time I think the four of us will connect in a few years at least, because it's been a while since the four of us ever.
Yeah.
It's definitely been a long time since the four of us were in the same room together. So
yeah.
This will be as close as it's going to get for some time.
For some time to come.
As you know, I'm not leaving this basement for a while. So if you want folks to continue donating to Kickstarter, what are some ways they can find you on the internet, and how can they get to your Kickstarter?
Well, if you go into Kickstarter.com and just do a search for The Monkey King, it'll show up under comics and graphic novels. It'll be the project that they love. And you can check out I think I check my Instagram account the most out of all of them. But my Instagram handle is the same as my Twitter, which is Epic Props. So that's where I'm posting the most about, updates and things like that. So, but yeah, just check it out. It is a modernized take on the Monkey King. He is in Chinatown, New York, and they are going on their journey west to San Francisco's Chinatown. They're going to hit every Chinatown along the way, discover enlightenment. What they learned, they're going to bring back to New York and save New York from itself.
Well, Jarrett, congratulations on all your success. I am so thrilled that the Monkey King took off the way that it did. I'm waiting for your next project, whatever that is. And, like I said, looking forward to the Secret Identities reunion.
Yeah, man, it's going to be fun. Can't wait.
Thanks, Jerry. Shout out to Jerry Ma. Follow his Kickstarter at Epic Props on Twitter and Instagram.
I had one DC nerd popping thing. Did you see there was a little bit of Catwoman shots came out about the Batman movie? Just a little bit.
I didn't see that.
I think it snuck its way because there's someone into something, because someone is doing a documentary on Catwoman, found just like a few shots of Zoe Kravitz's Selena Kyle, and I thought you all would be over that. Maybe it was an internet hoax. But
I didn't see it. I mean, yeah, normally I would be all over anything Batman related, but I hadn't seen that.
But I just thought it was real cool, and I just want to, in the interview, Zoe Kravitz has got like the cool year one haircut.
Yeah,
and I just want to posit that I'm not the biggest Batman fan, but Catwoman is always good. I'm just gonna advance that idea.
Oh no, I'm super stoked that Zoe Kravitz is Catwoman and that she's rocking she's the first short-haired Selena Kyle we've ever had in the movies, and I'm excited about that. Anything nerd poppin', Brittany?
I guess the Venom trailer. I really like that. That made my morning.
Yeah, nice.
Because waffles.
And ketchup. Waffles and ketchup. For me, I've talked about this show a couple of times. It's Invincible on Amazon. I finally finished it, and it's definitely super gory, super violent. If anyone's seen it, the last episode has already launched 1,000 memes. Without spoiling it too much, I will say that there is a mustachioed white guy who beats the living tar out of Steven Yeun. And I'm starting to think Robert Kirkman has a thing about mustachioed white dudes beating the skulls in of Steven Yeun. Not necessarily Asian people.
That's
Steven
a bad
Yeun
trope
in particular.
Yeah, specifically
Steven Yeun. There's a subway train scene that's the inverse of the Spider-Man subway train. That's really disgusting. And
I just watched the first episode of Invincible after you talked about it, Keith, and I mean, I can't get into it, man. I got a lot of weird heebie-jeebies off that whole episode, but
so I won't spoil if you haven't finished it, but yeah, just know that in the finale, a mustachioed white guy beats in the skull of Steven Yeun, and
looks sort of like J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah,
among other
things. He looks like J. Jonah Jameson, and he looks like Jeffrey Dean Morgan. And I'm just starting to think Robert Kirkman's got a thing for bashing in Steven Yeun's skull.
So there's not going to be a carryover of his character?
I won't say that. I mean, there will be an Invincible season 2.
Oh no!
Because remember, he is invincible. Without spoiling.
Oh no! I don't know if I want to watch this show now.
Right. But I mean, from the first episode, that kind of shit is going to happen. I don't quite get the cartoony style gross ultra violence.
It's
juxtaposition still.
I don't either. I'm not endorsing the show, honestly, but I couldn't not make that observation that Robert Kirkman really hates Steven Yeun, apparently.
Yeah, and it's not even groundbreaking, because have you watched those DC animated movies? They do the ultra violence thing too. But anyway.
Yeah, so that's this week on Hard Knock Life. Dominic, how can people find you on the internet?
Oh, I'm Dama, DOMMAH.
Brittany?
You can find me at Hi Brittany Monet on Twitter and other places. And you can also follow my other podcast, which is the Black Lightning Podcast, at BL_podcast on Twitter.
You can find me on Twitter at @TheRealChow, _real_Chow. Follow the Nerds of Color at the Nerds of Color, and go to hardknockmedia.com to find this and all the podcasts in the Hard Knock family. subscribe and download on Apple, Google, Stitcher, Spotify. Go to youtube.com/nerdsofcolor to watch videos, and support us on patreon.com/nerdsofcolor and on GoFundMe. Buy merch at TeePublic. We're actually running a contest right now. If you submit a design about what it means to be a nerd of color, we will be featuring it in our store, and you will receive a commission for every t-shirt you sell. And we're going to pick one that will receive a bundle of goodies from TeePublic. So check that out, teepublic.com. And until next time,
You make a good team.
see you, everybody.
This is the hard knock life, but not the chicken kind. More like the people in the